Have you ever noticed how quiet a room feels right after a hum from an old refrigerator or air conditioner suddenly stops? You might not have even realized how loud it was while it was running. You were just living with it, adjusting your voice over it, letting it sit in the background of your thoughts. It's only when the switch flips off that your shoulders drop, and you realize how much tension you were holding all along. That same thing happens in our daily lives with people, notifications, obligations, and the constant stream of small demands on our attention. We adapt to the background noise of life so seamlessly that we begin to confuse constant noise with normalcy. We build our routines around continuous availability. We check messages while waiting for coffee, answer calls while cooking dinner, and leave our minds open to everyone else's schedule from sunrise to late at night. Over time, that noise becomes our normal, and we forget what genuine quiet feels like. We step out of bed and immediately reach for our screens, absorbing opinions, news, and requests before we have even had a chance to fully wake up. By mid-morning, our minds are already carrying the weight of a dozen different conversations, half-formed thoughts, and subtle social expectations. We tell ourselves that this is just what it means to be productive, to be responsible, or to stay connected. But in reality, we are simply running our engines on high speed, accumulating a silent kind of fatigue that builds up week after week. Consider how often you find yourself surrounded by input, even in moments that are supposed to be restful. You take a walk down the street, but your eyes are glued to a feed, or your ears are filled with audio. You sit down for lunch, but you place a screen in front of you so you don't have to sit alone with your thoughts. You pause between tasks at work, and instead of taking a deep breath and letting your mind rest, you open another tab to check updates. It is as if we have become deeply uncomfortable with the blank spaces in our days. We fill every pause with noise because the noise feels familiar, while the silence feels strange or demanding. What we rarely realize is how much energy it takes to process this constant stream of input. Every message requires a decision. Should I reply now or later? How should I phrase this? What will they think? Every piece of news or update demands an emotional reaction, even if it is small. Over the course of a single day, these micro decisions add up to a massive drain on our focus and peace of mind. We end up feeling exhausted at the end of the day, not necessarily because we did heavy physical or mental labor, but because our attention was pulled in 100 different directions without a single moment of real stillness. The subtle danger of continuous noise is that it hides our true state from us. When you are always busy, always responding, and always listening to something external, you don't have the time or space to ask yourself how you are actually doing. You don't notice that you are overwhelmed until you reach a breaking point. You don't notice that a routine is no longer serving you until you are completely burned out. The background hum keeps you moving, but it also keeps you from feeling rooted in your own life. It keeps you floating on the surface of things, reacting to whatever happens next, rather than choosing where you want to direct your focus. Stepping away isn't about running away from responsibilities or severing connections. It is simply about turning off that background noise long enough to hear yourself think again. It is about creating a temporary space where no one is asking anything of you, where there are no incoming alerts to check, and where your mind can finally settle into its own organic rhythm. When you step back from the constant flow of information and interaction, you give yourself the rare opportunity to reset your baseline. You start to recognize the difference between genuine engagement and mindless habit. Before we dive deeper into what happens when you step away, leave a comment below with this simple affirmation. I give myself permission to pause and regroup. Let it be your commitment to taking a moment for yourself today. Taking that small step to acknowledge your need for quiet is where real clarity begins. Think about the last time your phone buzzed while you were in the middle of something else. Did you instantly feel that subtle pull to reach out and check it? Most of us have developed an automatic habit of responding right away. We reply to messages while walking down the street, answer emails during lunch breaks, and chime in on group chats while sitting at traffic lights. It feels like staying connected, but really, it means our attention is constantly split into small pieces. This impulse to answer immediately doesn't just happen by accident. We have spent years training our brains to treat every digital alert as a priority. Over time, that expectation transforms into a subtle inner pressure. We worry that if we don't reply within minutes, people will think we are being distant, unprofessional, or uncaring. We start treating our own focus as something that can be interrupted at any second, by anyone, for any reason. Consider how this reflex shapes your daily energy. When you are constantly reacting to incoming signals, you are never fully present in whatever you are currently doing. You might be having a conversation with a friend, working on a personal project, or simply trying to rest. Yet a part of your mind is always on standby, waiting for the next signal. You end up existing in a state of continuous anticipation. Your focus is fragmented before you even have a chance to deep dive into anything meaningful. What makes this reflex so persistent is how quiet and invisible it feels. You don't usually sit down and consciously decide, I am going to stop what I am doing right now to answer a low priority note. Instead, your hand moves toward the screen, almost on autopilot. You unlock the display before you even realize you've reached for it. It becomes a sensory habit, a quick movement driven by curiosity, obligation, or simply the desire to clear an unread badge from your screen. We trade our peace of mind for the temporary satisfaction of an empty inbox or a cleared notification center. When you step back, even for a short while, that immediate reflex begins to break down. You stop treating every incoming ping like an emergency that requires your immediate energy. You begin to notice that most things can wait an hour, an afternoon, or even a couple of days without anything falling apart. That realization alone brings a subtle wave of relief. Stepping away exposes how much of our urgency is self-imposed. When you don't respond immediately, the sky doesn't fall. The world keeps turning. People move on with their days, and the conversation simply waits until you are ready to engage with it thoughtfully. You start to see that true responsiveness is not about speed. It is about quality and presence. Answering someone when you actually have the time, and energy to offer a considered reply is far more meaningful than sending a rushed, distracted answer just to tick a box. By stepping back, you shift from being reactive to being intentional. You regain control over your own schedule and mental space. You begin to decide when to step into conversations and when to step out, rather than letting external notifications dictate the flow of your day. You realize that your time and attention belong to you first, and learning to pause before responding is one of the simplest ways to reclaim them. When you are always available, it is easy to assume that every conversation in your life is a deep, mutual connection. But when you step back from initiating contact, the picture starts to clear up. You notice which relationships depend entirely on you reaching out first, organizing the plans, or checking in to see how the other person is doing. It isn't about keeping score or being bitter. It is simply about observing reality. In the flow of daily life, we often play roles without realizing it. We become the person who sends the morning text, the one who coordinates weekend plans, or the steady voice that always listens when someone needs to vent. Because we occupy those roles so consistently, we rarely pause to ask whether the dynamic is balanced. We pour our energy into maintaining bonds, assuming that our effort is matched by an equal level of presence from the other side. It is only when you step back and go quiet that you can actually measure the true momentum of those connections. When you stop driving the dynamic, a natural pause occurs. In that pause, you get to see who fills the silence. You begin to notice the difference between people who are merely comfortable receiving your attention and people who actively value your presence. Some acquaintanceships thrive purely on convenience. They exist because you are physically nearby, accessible on a messaging app, or always ready to say yes. When you make yourself temporarily less accessible, those superficial interactions quietly drift away on their own. This realization can bring a quiet sense of clarity, even if it feels a bit sober at first. It forces you to look at how much energy you expend simply keeping fragile connections on life support. You see where you have been over-functioning to compensate for someone else's indifference. Recognizing this is not a sign of failure. It is a vital step toward protecting your emotional resources. Your attention and care are finite, and spending them on one-sided dynamics leaves you with less energy for the relationships that truly nourish you. Stepping away acts like a gentle filter. The people who genuinely care about your well-being will notice your quietness and reach out, not because they want something from you, but simply to ask how you are doing. The subtle shift in perspective shows you where your energy is truly appreciated and where it is simply taken for granted. When someone reaches out during your quiet phase simply to check on your spirit, without an agenda, without a request, and without needing anything in return, it reveals a solid foundation. These are the people who value you for who you are, not just for what you provide or how convenient you make their lives. They recognize your presence even when you aren't making a loud effort to be seen. Ultimately, this exercise isn't about cutting people off out of resentment or testing others to see if they pass a check. It is about gaining an honest understanding of your social ecosystem. It allows you to reallocate your time with intention. When you return from a period of stepping away, you can invest your care where it is genuinely reciprocated, surrounding yourself with dynamics built on mutual presence, clear respect, and shared effort. When you spend all your time around others, you naturally adapt to their pacing. You eat when they want to eat, speak at the speed of the group, and align your schedule with everyone else's expectations. Slowly, your personal rhythm gets buried under the collective tempo of your work, your family, or your social circle. You begin rushing through your tasks, not because you personally need to hurry, but because the environment around you is moving at a restless, hurried speed. Living at a borrowed pace creates an invisible, ongoing friction within you. Without even realizing it, you start hurrying through your mornings, skimming through your reading, and eating your meals without truly tasting them. You match the urgency of incoming calls, the rapid back and forth of group conversations, and the fast-paced expectations of daily routines. Over time, this constant adjustment leaves you feeling subtle internal strain, as if you are continuously running on a treadmill that someone else is controlling. We rarely pause to consider that speed is entirely subjective. What feels like a comfortable rhythm for one person might feel completely overwhelming for you. And what feels like productive energy to a group might leave your mind feeling scattered. When you are continuously embedded in busy settings, you don't have the space to choose your own speed. You simply default to the speed of the loudest or fastest element in your surroundings, sacrificing your natural composure just to keep up with the crowd. Taking time away lets you reset your internal clock. You begin to notice small things. How long you actually like to linger over morning tea, how fast you naturally walk when you aren't rushing to meet someone, or what time of day your mind feels sharpest. You return to your natural cadence rather than constantly matching someone else's speed. In solitude, there is no external pressure telling you to move faster or slow down. If you want to spend an extra 20 minutes sitting in silence after waking up, you can do so without feeling like you are falling behind. If you want to complete a task slowly and deliberately, focusing on every small detail without interruption, you have the full freedom to take your time. You begin to rediscover the simple comfort of doing one thing at a time, at a speed that feels grounded and manageable. This return to your natural rhythm restores a deep sense of internal calm. When you move at your own speed, your thoughts become clearer and less frantic. You stop operating from a state of artificial urgency, where every small requirement feels like an immediate demand. You realize that much of the pressure you felt was simply picked up from the environment, rather than being a true requirement of the task itself. Stepping away allows you to establish a strong inner baseline for your personal tempo. Once you spend time resting in your true pace, you develop a much stronger awareness of when you are being dragged back into unnecessary rush. When you eventually return to busy environments, you carry that quiet internal cadence with you. You find that you can remain calm, steady, and composed, even when the world around you is moving at a chaotic speed. Consider how much effort goes into maintaining a visible presence every single day. We spend energy carefully choosing our words, managing our facial expressions during long meetings, listening attentively to complaints, and offering advice on problems that aren't ours to solve. It is an ongoing, subtle drain on our daily stamina. Every social interaction, no matter how pleasant, requires a degree of emotional regulation, cognitive effort, and conscious awareness that quietly siphons away your vital reserves. Throughout a typical day, you are constantly managing the impression you leave on others. You nod along to conversations, suppress your impatience, tone down your true opinions to keep the peace, and project an image of composure even when you feel weary inside. You carry the unspoken expectations of your workplace, your household, and your social circle, adjusting your tone and energy level to fit what each environment demands. This subtle self-monitoring happens almost automatically, making it easy to overlook just how much personal power it consumes over the course of weeks and months. Beyond social performance, there is also the mental tax of open emotional loops. When you are deeply involved in everyone else's affairs, you carry their anxieties, conflicts, and dilemmas around in your head. You find yourself pondering solutions to someone else's dilemma while trying to fall asleep, or replaying an awkward exchange long after the moment has passed. This background processing keeps your nervous system in a state of quiet alert, preventing you from ever reaching a state of true, deep restoration. When you step away, all that redirected energy returns to you. You are no longer managing reactions or performing for an audience. You don't have to explain your mood, justify your choices, or keep up a friendly facade when you simply need to rest. The constant outward projection stops, allowing your energy to flow back inward toward your own well-being. In that quiet retreat, you begin to experience what it feels like to have an abundance of mental space. You might find that tasks that used to feel exhausting, like reading a long book, organizing a closet, or preparing a fresh meal, suddenly feel light and manageable, simply because your focus isn't scattered in 10 different directions. Activities that previously felt like chores transform into peaceful, rewarding experiences because you are finally doing them with a full tank of stamina. Reclaiming your energy also brings back your creative impulse and clarity of thought. When your mind is no longer clogged with the noise, opinions, and emotional clutter of the outside world, your own innate curiosity has room to breathe. You start having original thoughts again, feeling inspired to take on personal projects, or simply enjoying the quiet pleasure of resting without feeling a lingering sense of guilt or urgency. Ultimately, taking a step back teaches you the true value of your internal reserves. You realize that your stamina, focus, and emotional availability are finite treasures that deserve protection. When you stop giving away your vital energy to every passing request, minor obligation, and external demand, you rebuild a strong foundation of personal reserves that allows you to show up in the world with genuine strength, clarity, and purpose. It is almost impossible to read a road sign when your forehead is pressed right up against the metal. You have to take a few steps back to read the letters clearly. Life works the exact same way. When you are caught in the middle of daily routines, weekly meetings, and constant social interactions, you are too close to see the full layout of your choices. You become so focused on navigating the immediate obstacle right in front of you that you lose sight of where the road is actually taking you. When you are deeply immersed in your day-to-day rhythm, momentum takes over. You move from one task to the next, one meeting to another, and one social obligation to the next, without pausing to evaluate whether these activities are actually serving your long-term well-being. You accept recurring frustrations, minor annoyances, and draining obligations simply because they have been part of your scenery for so long that they feel permanent. You get used to feeling slightly overwhelmed, assuming that is just the price of living a busy life. Distance gives you clarity. When you disappear for a little while, you can look back at your daily life with fresh eyes. You start to see which habits build you up and which ones leave you feeling drained. Patterns that seemed normal from up close suddenly reveal themselves as repetitive, unhelpful, or completely unnecessary. You begin to notice the subtle feedback loops in your behavior, how answering late-night messages leaves you sluggish the next morning, or how staying in certain conversations leaves you feeling mentally depleted for hours afterward. In the stillness of solitude, the clutter clears, and the bigger picture comes into sharp focus. You start to recognize the unspoken dynamics in your personal and professional relationships that you were previously too distracted to see. You might notice that you have been repeatedly overextending yourself to compensate for systemic issues at work, or that a specific social habit has been quietly consuming your best hours without giving you any real fulfillment in return. What once felt like chaotic, unpredictable stress turns out to be a clear, predictable pattern that you have the power to alter. Stepping back also allows you to reevaluate your true priorities. When you remove yourself from the immediate demands of others, you can clearly separate your genuine goals from external expectations. You might realize that certain ambitions you were chasing were never truly yours to begin with, but rather goals you adopted to fit in or gain approval. On the flip side, you might rediscover personal projects, creative ideas, or simple habits that you shelved months ago because the daily grind consumed all your available focus. This shift in perspective transforms how you view your time and energy. Once you see the full landscape of your routine, you gain the clarity needed to make intentional choices rather than automatic reactions. You stop treating every demand as an unchangeable reality and begin viewing your life as a design that you can actively refine. When you step back into your daily environment after a period of quiet reflection, you do so with a heightened sense of awareness. You are no longer easily pulled into unnecessary drama or mindless busywork because you have seen the entire mechanism from a distance. By choosing to step away temporarily, you gain the invaluable gift of perspective, allowing you to build a daily life that reflects your true intentions, rather than just your immediate habits. How many of your daily choices are truly yours? And how many are subtle compromises made for the comfort of people around you? Think about the music you listen to, the food you order, or how you choose to spend a free Saturday afternoon. When you are always surrounded by opinions and preferences, your own choices blend into the background. You begin ordering what is easiest for the group, watching whatever show is trending, and agreeing to activities simply because they require the least friction. Over time, your personal taste becomes quiet, obscured by the continuous volume of external influences. Living in constant proximity to others requires a baseline level of adaptation. You adjust your schedule to match a friend's availability, choose restaurants based on dietary preferences that aren't yours, and curate your environment to keep those around you comfortable. While this adaptability is a natural part of living in a community, doing it continuously, without a break, slowly dilutes your sense of identity. You get so used to asking, "What does everyone else want to do?" that you stop asking, "What do I actually want?" When you step away from the group dynamic, a surprising space opens up. Without the subtle pressure to conform or accommodate, you are forced to confront your own genuine preferences. In the absence of suggestions, options, or collective decisions, you have to decide for yourself how to fill the time. At first, this total freedom can feel oddly disorienting. You might stand in your living room or walk down a street unsure of where to turn, simply because you are no longer reacting to someone else's direction. In solitude, there is no one to compromise with. If you want to spend 2 hours listening to a podcast on local architecture or walking down quiet side streets without a destination, you just do it. You remember your personal tastes, your specific interests, and the quiet activities that genuinely bring you satisfaction without needing approval from anyone else. You begin to notice what actually catches your eye when no one is watching. The specific genres of books you reach for, the simple meals you prepare when you only have to please your own palate, or the stillness you choose over background entertainment. This process of rediscovery goes beyond simple hobbies or entertainment choices. It reconnects you with your fundamental values. You begin to differentiate between authentic joy and performative enjoyment. You realize that certain social rituals you routinely participated in were actually exhausting to you, while quiet, low-key habits you abandoned long ago held real restorative power. You start honoring your personal preferences without feeling the need to explain, justify, or validate them to an audience. Reclaiming your personal taste builds a quiet form of self-confidence. When you know what you like, what you enjoy, and what brings you genuine fulfillment, you become much less reliant on external validation. You no longer look to others to dictate what is interesting, worthwhile, or enjoyable. You develop a clear, grounded sense of self that is anchored in your own authentic experience, rather than the shifting consensus of a crowd. When you eventually step back into your social circles, you bring this restored sense of individuality with you. You can engage with others from a place of genuine authenticity, rather than passive drift. You share what you truly love, respect the preferences of others without losing your own, and make intentional choices about how you invest your leisure time. By stepping away to find out what you actually like, you ensure that when you say yes to something, it is a true reflection of your own choice, rather than just a habit of agreement. At first, quiet time can feel strange or even slightly uncomfortable. When the room goes still and there are no messages to answer, your mind might feel restless, searching for something to process. We are so accustomed to constant stimulation that silence can initially feel like an empty space that needs filling. You might find yourself compulsively reaching for your phone, turning on a background stream, or inventing small, unnecessary errands just to avoid sitting in an undisturbed space. This initial friction is completely normal. It is simply the mind adjusting to the sudden absence of constant input. In our everyday routines, noise acts as a shield. It keeps our conscious focus occupied with external events, preventing us from having to encounter our own underlying thoughts, unresolved worries, or subtle bodily fatigue. When you suddenly remove that external background noise, all the internal feelings you were too busy to notice come floating to the surface. You become aware of lingering tension in your shoulders, unexpressed emotions from past interactions, or a subtle, quiet exhaustion that you have been pushing through for weeks. Facing that sudden wave of awareness can feel intimidating, which is why so many people quickly seek out noise to cover it up again. However, if you choose not to rush away from that stillness, a profound shift begins to take place. Silence is not a void or a vacuum that requires urgent distraction. It is a natural, steady backdrop that allows your nervous system to catch up with your life. When you sit with the quiet rather than fighting it, your physical body gradually recognizes that there is no immediate demand to respond to, no performance to give, and no problem that urgently requires your attention. The physical tightness in your body slowly begins to loosen its grip. If you stay in that quiet space a bit longer, the restlessness fades away and transforms into comfort. Silence stops feeling like an absence of sound and begins feeling like a place of safety. It becomes a calm sanctuary where your thoughts can finish their complete sentences without being interrupted by external demands. You begin to experience a rare form of cognitive ease, where your mind isn't forced to bounce between competing priorities, but can instead rest, wander, or settle deeply into a single peaceful focus. In this deep quiet, you develop a brand new relationship with your internal environment. You realize that your mind isn't inherently chaotic. It was simply overwhelmed by the constant volume of the world around you. As the mental dust settles, your thoughts become orderly, coherent, and grounded. You start to experience a genuine sense of mental spaciousness, a quiet internal expanse where you can simply exist without needing to explain, prove, or justify anything to anyone. Developing a comfort with silence grants you a quiet, enduring kind of emotional self-reliance. When you no longer fear stillness, you stop relying on constant external stimulation to keep you feeling regulated or entertained. You don't need to fill every empty pause in a conversation, every lonely evening, or every free weekend with artificial noise just to feel secure. You become entirely at home within your own quiet presence. When you step back out into the bustling world, after spending quality time in stillness, you carry that internal sanctuary along with you. The surrounding noise of daily life no longer hits you with the same intensity, because you know how to access that calm, undisturbed center within yourself. You move through chaotic environments with a renewed sense of stability, knowing that silence is always available to you as a quiet place of recovery whenever the world becomes too loud. Setting boundaries verbally can sometimes feel stressful or confrontational. But when you spend time away, boundaries naturally form on their own. You come to realize that your time and attention are limited resources, and you naturally become more thoughtful about how you share them going forward. You no longer feel compelled to craft elaborate explanations, invent soft excuses, or engage in tense debates just to protect your peace. Instead, the boundary becomes an automatic side effect of your newfound clarity and self-respect. In everyday life, many of us fall into the habit of overcommitting out of pure momentum. We say yes to social invitations we don't really want to attend, take on extra tasks at work that aren't ours to handle, and let conversations drag on long after our mental energy has been completely exhausted. We do this because saying no in the moment feels uncomfortable, or because we have been conditioned to put everyone else's immediate comfort above our own long-term well-being. We trade our precious energy to avoid brief moments of social awkwardness, slowly eroding our own boundaries in the process. When you step away from the continuous flow of demands, you get to experience what life feels like when your time is entirely your own. You taste the immense relief that comes from having uninterrupted hours, unhurried mornings, and a schedule free from obligations you secretively resent. This experience acts as a powerful recalibration. Once you know how valuable your peace of mind truly is, your tolerance for unnecessary friction and avoidable drains on your energy drops significantly. This shift in perspective transforms how you interact with incoming requests. When someone asks for your time or energy after you have spent time in solitude, you no longer react from a place of obligation or guilt. You pause and evaluate the request against the peace you have just cultivated. You ask yourself whether giving your time to this situation is a genuine, worthwhile exchange, or if it is simply another drain you used to accept out of habit. Because your internal priorities have shifted, your responses become simple, direct, and completely calm. You don't need to over-explain why you aren't available, nor do you need to justify your need for rest. A simple, polite decline feels natural because you are no longer seeking external validation to confirm that your time matters. You realize that protecting your focus isn't an act of selfishness or hostility toward others. It is a basic act of stewardship over your own life. When you eventually step back into your regular social circle, you bring a newfound sense of intentionality with you. You no longer say yes out of habit or obligation. You participate because you genuinely want to be there, and you step back when you need to recharge, without feeling guilty for taking care of your focus. People around you naturally begin to sense this shift. They notice that your time is no longer something they can claim on a whim. And as a result, they begin to treat your presence and availability with far greater respect. Rebuilding your boundaries naturally means you stop treating your energy like a public utility that anyone can tap into at any time. You become the conscious gatekeeper of your own life, deciding clearly what gets access to your mind and what stays on the outside. By stepping away and letting your boundaries rebuild themselves in silence, you create a life where your commitments are sincere, your presence is authentic, and your peace remains firmly intact. Stepping away isn't about isolating yourself permanently or pushing people away forever. It is a temporary pause meant to clear away the clutter so you can re-engage with your life in a clear, meaningful way. It is a tool for resetting your perspective whenever the world gets too noisy. The ultimate goal of taking time in solitude is not to construct a fortress against the world, but to rebuild your internal clarity so that when you do step back into the flow of daily life, you are acting as an active participant rather than a passive survivor. When you spend extended time away from the constant noise, social performance, and endless demands of daily life, you undergo an internal quiet recalibration. You strip away the superficial obligations and artificial urgencies that previously dictated your schedule. You remember what it feels like to have an undivided mind, an unhurried cadence, and an undisturbed emotional state. That period of quiet retreat grounds you, anchoring your identity firmly in your own authentic values rather than the ever-shifting expectations of those around you. Because you have recharged your mental and emotional reserves, your return to the world is marked by a completely different quality of presence. You no longer enter social spaces running on empty, relying on forced enthusiasm, shallow pleasantries, or protective walls just to get through the day. Instead, you show up with real energy, quiet confidence, and genuine stability. You are able to be fully present with the people in front of you because your focus isn't scattered across a dozen different obligations or hidden anxieties. When you return from a period of quiet reflection, you move with greater calm and focus. You engage in conversations with genuine presence because you are no longer running on empty. You listen better, choose your commitments carefully, and move forward with a clear sense of what matters to you. Because you have taken the time to listen to your own thoughts in silence, you become a far better listener for others. You aren't just waiting for your turn to speak or trying to manage their impressions of you. You can simply sit with them, hear them deeply, and offer thoughtful, grounded support. Furthermore, returning with purpose changes how you manage your commitments going forward. You no longer slide back into the old, mindless habits of saying yes to every request or filling every blank space on your calendar out of routine momentum. You treat your time and attention as valuable, intentional investments. You choose your projects, your social engagements, and your daily habits with careful discernment, ensuring that everything you invite into your life aligns with the clarity you discovered while you were away. This purposeful approach also changes how you handle future noise and stress. Having experienced the profound clarity that comes from stepping away, you no longer view feeling overwhelmed as an unchangeable reality of modern life. You recognize it for what it is, a simple signal that your life has accumulated too much external clutter, and that it is time to turn down the volume once again. You realize that you hold the power to step back, reset your baseline, and clear your slate whenever the world around you becomes too chaotic. Ultimately, stepping away and returning with purpose creates a sustainable, resilient rhythm for your life. It bridges the gap between inner peace and outer action. You don't have to choose between living in continuous burnout or escaping into total isolation. By making space for periodic reflection, you learn how to step back to restore your spirit, and then step forward to live your life with intention, strength, and quiet clarity. Stepping away from the world is never truly about leaving it behind forever. It is about changing how you carry yourself when you return. When you quiet the background noise, stop reacting to every immediate impulse and give yourself space to breathe. Something fundamental shifts within you. You begin to realize that peace was never something you had to chase or earn from the outside world. It was simply waiting for you beneath the surface, waiting for you to stop long enough to notice it. Think about the clarity you hold in this very moment. The constant demand to be everywhere, know everything, and answer everyone loses its grip when you realize how much of that urgency was self-imposed. You don't have to keep up with every rhythm around you, nor do you need to explain your need for quiet to anyone else. Your focus, your time, and your emotional energy are yours to direct. When you choose to protect them, you aren't shrinking away from life. You are stepping into it with genuine intention. As you move forward from this reflection and step back into your daily routine, carry this quiet baseline with you. You don't need to vanish for weeks or change your entire life overnight to feel this grounded again. Sometimes, disappearing simply means taking 10 quiet minutes in the morning before opening your messages. It means letting a call go to voicemail while you finish a quiet meal. It means choosing a peaceful walk over another hour of endless scrolling, or feeling completely comfortable saying no without offering a long excuse. When the world gets loud again, and it inevitably will, remember that you always hold the key to turning down the volume. You now know what it feels like to step back, observe the bigger picture, and reset your internal clock. You know that silence is not an empty void to be feared, but a sanctuary where your thoughts can finally settle and mature. Every time you feel scattered, overwhelmed, or pulled in too many directions, let it be a gentle reminder to pause, gather your focus, and step away for just a little while. Before you close this experience and go about the rest of your day, take a slow, deep breath and let all the lingering tension drop from your shoulders. Take a moment to anchor this state of calm right here. Leave a comment below with this simple affirmation: I guard my peace, I choose my focus, and I return on my own terms. Let those words sit in your mind as a quiet promise to yourself, a promise to honor your time, protect your energy, and navigate your world with clarity, purpose, and steady poise.